Sweet promises given to all who believe. Behold, I
Welcome to
come
Bible Talk class.
quickly, mine own
We are continuing our
to
presentation
receive.
on jewelry and the Christian. And here we are looking at the place of jewelry in the New Testament. And I believe you have followed our presentation on the place of jewelry in the Old Testament. This presentation here is going to continue that presentation and will formalize or will end the discussion with some important notes. Let's begin with some background information about the use of jewelry in the New Testament. In the Greco-Roman culture, jewelry had several roles and was worn by both men and women, rich and poor, free or slave. Greek culture frowned on men using earrings because they considered them as feminine, more female. In Greek culture, prostitutes wore earrings while slaves wore earrings in Roman culture. Interestingly, wealthy persons, both males and females, in Greece and Rome wore earrings decked with pearls and other precious stones to signify their social standing. Greco-Roman men wore more than one finger ring and sometimes pendants. Roman children wore amulets for protection from evil forces and sicknesses. Wealthy men in political positions wore rings of gold and precious stones, while the poor wore rings of iron. Emperors wore toques and bracelets as symbol of conquest. Women wore rings, bracelets, earrings, and necklaces at the same time and even deck their brooches used to fasten their garments with gemstone. The shape of bracelets, say snake, symbolized immortality. Toques were awarded to brave soldiers to signify victory and bravery as exemplified by Titus Menelaus in 361 BC. Earrings were used by women to embellish the face, symbolize value in society, and with amethyst embedded for enchantment. Some earrings had the embossment of amethyst. Amethyst was like a gemstone, precious stone, that was believed to have some energies that could charm people. Women luxuriously braided their hair and held it together with gold and precious stones. Slaves did the braiding, and the process was too consuming. We have a Greek historian who makes clear how those who appear well adorned walked. Strabo, by name, depicts people who beautify their appearance by braiding their hair, growing beards, wearing golden ornaments, and only rarely can you see them touching one another in walking, for fear that the adornment of their hair may not remain intact. From Geography, Book 17, Lesson 3, and Line 7. Pliny, a Roman historian, reports of women who wore pearls on their fingers, on their earrings, and on their slippers. He once disdainfully condemned Emperor Caligula's first empress, Lollia Paulina, who attended a feast wearing emeralds and pearls on her head, hair, ears, neck, and fingers. So you see how some people were not happy about how, some women adorn themselves beyond what society could even accept. The Roman law prescribed rings for a slave, free citizen, and non-citizen. Jewelry was also used for religious purposes, such as protection from evil forces. Let's look at some examples we have. Finger ring from Greco-Roman world is here displayed. We have earrings from Greco-Roman world, and here you can see the embossment of amethyst. We also have another finger ring from Greco-Roman world, beautifully designed. Pendants from Greco-Roman world. So this is what we have. Sometimes they had the impression of the emperor, and when one did wonderful work, performed wonderful deeds, one was given some of these pendants to signify, their victory or their great deeds performed that was appreciated by the community or by the emperor. We have brooches and fibula in Greco-Roman world. These items were used to hold, dresses together. We have toque from Greco-Roman world, sometimes used around the neck or the wrist. For example, you have this toque from Greco-Roman world. This is an example, and this is a design that you find. We also have royal crown, diadema, from Greco-Roman world. Braided hair from Greco-Roman world. This is an example. And sometimes they put several, items, jewelry items to hold the hair together, and that was magnificent. Now, let's look at some specific issues here. In the New Testament, the place of jewelry seems to mimic that of the Old Testament in terms of its various uses, because geographical and sociological settings are the same. We are looking at the same place where Israel had been before time. Israel was located in the place that it was located in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, the same place. So nothing changed. And therefore, the interaction with other nations, the influences were there. The tone of the New Testament, particularly in the epistles, in the use of jewelry, is subsumed in the Christological standing of believers. The discussion on whether a Christian can use jewelry or not is done through the lens of the belief that one is saved by Christ and one does everything to please one's new master. Gold, silver, pearls, precious stones, and leaves, flowers consist of materials for fashioning jewelry in the New Testament, and these passages are there to confirm. Now, we are looking at the uses of jewelry in the New Testament, and the first usage is adornment. Point 1. Paul urges women to adorn themselves with appropriate clothing, with modesty and moderation, but not plaiting of hair, gold or pearls, and costly dress. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 9. Paul stresses in verse 10 with a strong contrast, in Greek, ala, meaning but, that women should proclaim. The Greek word here for proclaim is epangeliomai, meaning to profess, proclaim, tell, shout, godliness through good works. So instead of putting on plaited hair, gold, pearls, and costly attire, Paul is saying, proclaim godliness through good works. And so that is an adornment in the New Testament. That is, proclaiming godliness through good works is a form of adornment. 2. Peter urges believing women who are married to unbelieving spouses to show pure conduct to win their husbands over, not the outward adornment of plaiting of hair, wearing of gold, and putting on garments. 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 3. Peter uses strong contrast. Again here, but in verse 4, to stress the true adornment, which is internal, interior, things that are in them, good things that are in them, pure conduct. That's what Peter calls this kind of adornment. Three, in the book of Revelation, two women appear differently. One, or A, the woman adorned with sun, moon, and crown of 12 stars, symbolizing godly entity. Revelation chapter 12, verse 1. And the woman adorned with purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls, symbolizing evil entity. So, talking about adornment, we have also in Revelation two women that stand for different philosophies. And the first one is clothed with sun, moon, and crown of 12 stars, symbolizing godly entity. On the other hand, the other woman is adorned with purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls, symbolizing evil identity. We are not saying that when you put on purple or scarlet or gold or precious stones or pearls, you represent evil entity. No, this is only a symbolic presentation of two different kinds of women and what they stand for. Number 4, under adornment, is that precious stones are used in the description of the city of New Jerusalem as beautiful. So God used precious stones to decorate the new city called Jerusalem. Jewelry also as currency. In the New Testament period, coins of gold and silver were used as currency. For example, you see, number 2 here is that Jesus urged the disciples not to bring gold and silver as they went out to evangelize. And so here, the use or the reference to gold and silver is actually a reference to money in our contemporary language. Peter's use of silver and gold as he offered hope to the lame suggests their use as currency in Acts chapter 3, verse 6. Jewelry as evidence of wealth. One here is that the Magi's gift of gold to baby Jesus shows their wealth. And that's what we see when Jesus was born. And some Magi came and presented some gold and other items. So gold here is seen or to show the worth of these people. Jesus uses precious stones in describing a wealthy person and the high value of these items in his parables. So he tells you how precious or how valuable these items were in the first century. The elegant description of Babylon as a wealthy woman underscores the high value of precious stones and gold in the New Testament times. Wearing of golden ring distinguishes between the poor and the rich. According to James chapter 2, verse 2, James makes clear that when you receive any visitor, any guests, or anyone comes among you and the person is wearing gold, make sure that you don't discriminate against the poor and esteem the one wearing gold. Make sure you treat all of them the same. The tendency is there for us to distinguish and also discriminate. Jewelry as symbol of social status. One, the person who wears gold ring in James chapter 2, verse 2, demonstrate his social status in the church. And that is very clear. Even today, it remains true. The overcomer receives wreath as a crown. So when you wear a crown, it shows your social status because you are an overcomer. The 24 elders wear a crown of gold, signifying their honorable position in the presence of God as elders. They are identified as elders, and their crown of gold demonstrate that indeed they belong to honorable position in the presence of God. 4 is that Jesus wears many crowns, diadema, that's the royal crown, at his second coming, signifying his royal status. So the use of crown, some crowns, I would say, particularly with diadema, points to the fact that the wearer has a royal standing. In other words, has some royal status. It shows his royal standing in the community. Jewel as symbol of power, authority. Number 1 here is that the reinstatement of the prodigal son as a rightful son is made evident by the giving of signet ring. The Greek word is daktyloes. Luke chapter 15, verse 22. And that is the point. The ring that the father gave was a signet ring, just like a prince or a king. So his reinstatement was clearly, demonstrated by, giving this important ring. Jewelry also was used as offering. So the Magi's gifts of gold to baby Jesus, the king, are considered as offering. Now, it is important to address 2 important passages in the New Testament. The first one is 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 3. Let's try to understand this passage. Is the statement in 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 3 prescriptive or descriptive? Is the statement only prescribing what has to be done, or is just describing something that you can consider? It is not compulsory. Let's find out. Peter urges the believing wives to show pure conduct to win over their unbelieving husbands. And he calls this show submissiveness. So this is the literary context. To understand 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 3, we must understand verses 1 and 2. Again, Peter urges the believing wives to show pure conduct to win over their unbelieving husbands. And he calls this show, pure conduct, as submissiveness. How do you win your unbelieving husband or husbands? Peter will say, show pure conduct. Verse 3 lists items, namely plaiting of hair, putting on gold, and wearing of garments, which do not consist of pure conduct. So Peter makes clear what pure conduct means. He has made it clear that it means submissiveness, and that pure conduct is not plaiting of hair, putting on gold, and wearing of garments. Verse 4, contrast verse 3. The contrast here is done by using the Greek, adversative particle, ala, but, strong but. It's not soft but. There's a soft but. Usually, the Greek uses de, D-E in the Greek, in the Greek. And so there means but. It is very soft, not so, not so strong. But when the author uses Allah, it means strong, that what I'm saying is what you must take. So verse 4 contrasts verse 3, and posit the inner person that pleases God as the pure conduct. And so what you see here is that the pure conduct that is demonstrated to win an unbelieving husband over to Christ is understood as submissiveness, and that is done towards the husband. But verse 4 extends this pure conduct by saying that it is an inner person that pleases God. Some have suggested that the contrast in verse 4 only serves as what is better, but rejecting the items in verse 3 as seen in Matthew chapter 4, verse 4, John chapter 11, verse 52, 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 18. When you read these passages, what you see is that we have this construction, not, but, not, but. And so some have understood 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4 to mean that Peter is saying, not only plaiting of hair, putting on gold, pearls, and garments, but also pure conduct. In other words, you can do the two at the same time. So this is how some have understood this passage. But let's look at the passage carefully. The following observation of 1 Peter chapter 3, verse 3 and verse 4 is helpful here. Note carefully, the negation adverb, the not, the Greek word is uk, not, in verse 3, is contrasted with a strong adversative particle, Allah, but, in verse 4. That is, not, but construction is what you see in verses 3 and 4. Note again that when Allah does a but, follows a negation adverb, not, with present imperative mood, the negated item is totally rejected. What I mean here is this, and I've given some references here for you to appreciate. When you have not but construction, and the verb that is used with the not is a verb that is in imperative mood. Imperative mood is command mood. And in command mood, when you use that command mode, and after that, you use that command mode with not, and you follow that with but, it means that what is being presented with the imperative mood with the not is totally rejected, and that you are supposed to embrace what comes after but. The same formula is found in John chapter 6, verse 27, John chapter 7, verse 24, 1 John chapter 4, verse 1. So, we read here that verses 1 and 2 position pure conduct as evangelistic to win unbelieving husbands. So, according to Peter, this is the way to win your husbands over, and that is submissiveness. That is pure conduct. And that external self-arrangement in verse 3, cosmos, the word used cosmos, the word used here in the Greek is cosmos. That is arrangement, taking your time to arrange your body, does not depict pure conduct. And so when I say pure conduct, as a tool to evangelize your husband, to win him over to Christ, according to Peter, cosmos, self-arrangement, self-adornment, self-decoration does not form part of pure conduct. Rather, in verse 4, gentle and quiet conduct that is exhibited is pleasing to God. So it's not only going to please your husband, to win your husband over, but it's also going to please God. And so when you put up pure conduct, you are serving two purposes. That is, To win your husband over, that is, those who husbands are not believers. The second thing is that you are also going to please God. Well, that's what God wants to see. The pure conduct is not only evangelistic, but an act of obedience to God. And that is the point that we are stressing here. So, one can say that Peter rejected external adornment that projects social self-worth. That social self-worth is noisy because it contrasts the quiet spirit disposition as presented in verse 4. There's that contrast. When you wear these things, when you put these things on, it's noisy. It beclouds what is within you, and therefore it cannot serve the evangelistic purpose that what you have put on should serve. What is in you is what is supposed to be evangelistic and also pleasing to God. Peter appears to rank plaiting of hair, gold wearing, putting on garments at the same level of significance due to the construction, the external arrangement in verse 3. What we are saying here is that Peter is rejecting certain kinds of adornment. And this kind of adornment is only decorative. Plaiting of hair. So the kind of plaiting of hair that Peter is against. Gold wearing that Peter is against. Putting on garments that Peter is against. Of course, we wear garments, we wear gold, we plait our hair. But Peter is focused on decorative use of these items that block the display of one's pure conduct to win one's spouse over or to please God. From point H, Peter rejected certain types of hair plaiting and garment that have the same value as gold. So we are looking at the value of hair plaiting here, the value of the garment here. So they have the same value as gold because they are placed together with gold. So the same value we give to gold as we put gold on our body, the same value that Peter wants us to see this kind of hair plaiting and the garment that are put on. The reference to the submission of the holy women to their husbands as adornment further strengthens the mutual exclusivity of internal adornment, which is pure conduct, and external adornment, which consists of wearing of plaited hair, gold, and garments. What we are saying here is that Peter is not saying the two can go together. Peter is making clear that it's only one that goes, and that one is submissiveness. That one is pure conduct. And that we can have the two at the same time. That's what Peter is saying. The second passage here is 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 9 and 10. Here, Paul urges men to pray in an acceptable way in verse 8. Paul charges women to adorn. The word used is cosmos. Cosmos means to arrange yourself, to intentionally arrange your body, yourself. And that is important. So the intention is important. So here he's charging women to adorn themselves in well-mannered clothing with modesty and decency in verse 9a. Paul negates verse 9a by mentioning items that counter appropriate adornment in verse 9a as braided hair, gold, pearls, and costly attire in verse 9b. So verse 9b lists items that Paul do not consider as well-mannered dressing. Very clear. from the passage. Paul uses strong conjunction particle, the same particle used in Peter, Allah, to contrast verse 9b, that women have to profess. The Greek word used here is epangelomai, profess godliness through good works. Paul uses the word prepei, the Greek word, meaning it is fitting. It is fitting in 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 10, to enjoin women or to command women to adopt acceptable behavior regarding adornment. So when you use the Greek word, it is fitting, and you are not saying it is more fitting. If you say it is more fitting, it means that what you are comparing is also equally somehow good. Just that what you are comparing or what you have compared is better. If you are comparing two things, you say it is more fitting. It means that the two, one is good, the other is better. So none is bad. But here, Paul is saying it is fitting. That's the Greek word that is used here. It is fitting to behave this way. And that's what Paul is saying. Or to put on this particular adornment. Notably, 1 Timothy chapter 2, verse 9a and verse 10 are related in their emphasis on inner composure, as saved people expressed in shamefacedly outward appearance. So, verses 9a and 10 are saying the same thing about outward appearance. In other words, acceptable outward appearance. And according to Paul, very clear, well-mannered clothing. By juxtaposing the appropriate bodily adornment in verse 9a and ornamental or decorative adornment of plaited hair, gold, pearls, and costly garments in verse 9b, and using the word prepei in verse 10 to affirm what is fitting, Paul prescribes one kind of adornment, which is good works. All in all, in summary, one of the bodily adornments is fitting, not more fitting, to signify primary and secondary appreciation. So Paul is not saying that we have two kinds of adornments. One is primary, the other is secondary, and that you can use the two at the same time. Paul is saying that one is fitting. That's all he's saying, and that is the case. The evangelistic aspect of bodily adornment is not to husband, as in the case of 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 to 4, but to the community in which they found themselves. So 1 Peter chapter 3, verses 3 and 4 says that you only have to appear well, you only have to submit yourself to your husband by showing good conduct, and when you do that, you win your husband over, and that you don't need to use external adornment to do that. So you can see that in First Peter, it's about, trying to appear well, that you can win your husband over. But when you come to 1 Timothy, Paul is saying that this godliness that is shown in your good conduct is not only going to win your husband over, but it's going to win the entire community. It's going to show to the entire community who you really are and the master that you serve. Let's have some takeaways from the place of jewelry in the New Testament. 1. Jewelry of precious stones, gold and silver, communicates premium, value placed on something or someone. So we are looking at the value of the materials that are used in fashioning jewelry in the New Testament, as we have already discussed. Jewelry, number 2, was worn to enhance self-worth, power, authority, social standing, worth, and giving as offering. So these are the uses that we have found. Paul and Peter prescribe modest and decent adornment and reject external adornment that is not evangelistic. This contrast is mutually exclusive. Any adornment worn makes a statement on the values that the Christian upholds. And so we look at important notes for contemporary Christian. First point is that we belong to God by creation and redemption. The second point is that the blood of Jesus redeemed us from sin, but our response to this grace is exhibited in our life. I'm a born servant of God through the self-sacrifice of Jesus' death. This means I adhere to the will of God, not mine. To be more specific, whatever I eat, drink, put on, I do these things to the honor of God. My honor is sacrificed for his honor. My pride serves his glory. The New Testament passages that we have studied today reject classy use of extravagant personal adornment, including gold, pearls, and expensive clothing. This means that a total rejection of precious stones and clothing was not intended by Paul and Peter, and that there's a need to use non-extravagant jewelry. It may belong to the functional use in simplicity. Of course, we can use jewelry, but the jewelry has to be used in a sense that it has a function that is meaningful. The use of body enhancer, decorative, or ornamental jewelry is intended to attract the admiration of human beings, which can appear to cloud the saved status and mission. It has to be evangelistic. That's the point you're making. Jewelry is not inherently evil, but its use may determine its appropriateness or not. As Paul and Peter urge, through teaching, believing women to discontinue wearing ornamental jewelry, so also modern-day Christians should not require removal of ornamental jewelry as a condition for baptism. Anytime we want to engage people, attract people to appreciate Jesus Christ and what he has done, we should not present this lesson and make them make a choice that if you don't remove your jewelry, you are not, let's say, your earrings or whatever jewelry you put on you, you are not going to be baptized. Of course, we'll talk about the fashionability of jewelry very soon. But the point here is that if someone is using jewelry as decorative item, allow the person to accept Jesus, be baptized, and as Scripture has made clear, teach after baptism for the person to appreciate that Jesus is my Lord. Therefore, I must obey him as my master, and whatever he has said, I will obey. So follow Paul and Peter's principle. After these women had become Christians, then they engaged them that why not remove these things and show good conduct to attract your unbelieving husbands so that they will come to see the gospel, because that is what is in you. That is what has to be exhibited. So that approach is evangelistic and missionary minded approach. Anything put on human body reflects the inner being or is the voice of the true self of a person. This point is important. Note, anything put on human body reflects the inner being or is the voice of the true self of a person. There is a conscious and a subconscious motivation for every adornment: clothing, hairdo, including hair plaiting, ribbon, muffler, earrings, nose rings, anklet, bracelets, waist rings, crowns, brooches. God's prescription of the decorative apparel of the high priest was not intended to be repeated by any other religious leader of any time. And that is very clear. And so God only prescribed this for the high priest of the sanctuary services established in the Old Testament. It was not intended for any religious leader today. Perpetual removal of decorative jewelry for social standing and beatification in Exodus chapter 33, verses 2 to 6 corresponds to humans' realization of a constant reminder of dependence on God, but not self. Anything put on outwardly should not interrupt the rays, the light of grace in us, because our exterior is a reflector of our interior design, how we have been designed interiorly, how we have been saved, and we have appreciated the grace of God. We should make sure that anything we put on should project that saved status, project Christ, not self. Whatever is put on our bodies should be motivated by a clear, conscious, and meaningful purpose of existence. Pure conduct is the true personal adornment as against the decorative jewelry for socio-economic standing, self-esteem, religious, magical, protective, gender affirmation. Jewelry used for personal adornment can be functional when it does not outshine its functionality. In each culture, a functionality of personal adornment has to be determined while being guided by the principle of modesty and decency, devoid of any superstition. This point is important, and once we follow this principle, then we can be guided and making sure that we use the right jewelry for the right function and for the right motivation and purpose for our existence, for Christ and in Christ. The principle of self-denial, submission, simplicity, and correlation of the inner and outward appearance should inspire Christian dressing. And that is the point we want to stress. Now, the question we are asking is, who am I? I am a saved person. Another question is, whom am I projecting to the world? With my appearance. It is important. It's important. So we want all of us to ponder these questions and the important notes that we have shared with you as contemporary Christian, that whatever thing we put on our bodies, we must make sure that there is a meaning, there's a purpose, there's a motivation, and that it is evangelistic, and that it is pleasing to God. Thank you very much for staying with us. As we wind up this presentation, we want to finally focus on two areas that are of interest to many: wedding jewelry and earrings. So thank you very much, and continue to be a member of Bible Talk Class. Share what we have shared with you, with the world, your family, your church, and your friends. And let us continue to prepare ourselves for the soon coming of Jesus as we get the right teachings, and not to be distracted by any teaching that will cause us to not to focus on Christ and His coming. Stay blessed and see you again. Bye-bye.
Promises given to all who believe. Behold, I come quickly, mine own to receive. Hold fast till I come, the danger is great. Sleep not as do others.